Yo, what's good, world? I'm gonna take a quick break from work real quick. Let me go ahead and go offline. Take a quick break and drop a little bit in honor of it being MLK Day. Now, you know, any of y'all who follow me know I don't celebrate these holidays, even the MLK one. Most people know that he was a Mason. Annually gave speeches at the Masonic halls and things of that nature. So he was tapped in with that whole occult life, you know what I mean? So he knew everything that was really going on. But I think what I will say is rest in power to him, because, and even if he didn't, you know, you still don't ever, you know, wish disrespect on the dead. But rest in power to him for at the end of his life really rectifying what he really did, which was he led us astray, led us into, and when I say us, I mean copper people, those indigenous to this land, the real Native Americans, the real quote unquote Indians, or the Aboriginal people of this land, the people who were here before Christopher Columbus, quote unquote Christopher Columbus, came here. So what he did was lead us astray, because before the initial civil rights movement, before that, the initial stages of the civil rights movement, we were segregated. Our communities were flourishing. You know what I mean? We had a lot of great things going on. And he was the biggest proponent into making us think that we needed to integrate with white people in order for us to be accepted, or that we needed to be accepted by white people in order for us to finally see the prosperity and the greatness that we wanted to see in ourselves again. We needed to be accepted and integrated with white people, right? So I'll give, he started out that way, and it really led our people down the wrong path, because it really made us feel like we weren't good enough as is, and until we were considered equal in the eyes of white people, or equitable, or until we received equity and were put on their level from white people, like they had to give us the power. It wasn't like we were going to take it. We were going to continue to ask until they gave it to us. So, which made us feel inferior, made, you know, on a large scale, made us believe we were inferior. It was just like reinforcing that negative mindset that until we get to this point, we're not where we need to be. And as a whole, I think we're not where we need to be, but I think as we are, just being ourselves and amongst each other, we are great and more than enough. And we need to start tapping into that power and start building different communities, and start building our own communities again, and start having our own communities and things flourish, right? And we need to be the reason behind that. We need to stop looking for a handout from another group. If you believe in race and ethnicities, we don't need to be looking for another handout from another race and ethnicity. Let's just, for me, I'll call it a group, because a lot of that shit is really mindset. You know what I mean? People come to this country who aren't quote unquote white, but they move and act and get treated as white people. So a lot of that is really a mindset. But for those group of people who are currently, or were on top, for him to try to, and really kind of spearheaded it, him and a lot of other activists in the civil rights movement that were spearheading that, us being integrated into their system and becoming a part of that, and really not being who we are, or who we think we are, not feeling good about ourselves until that happened, until we still don't feel all the way right, because we're not quote unquote equitable to the white person. But really, in all actuality, our history goes back hundreds of thousands of years, and when you can only track their greatness or their power, a couple thousand, their reign for a couple thousand, and when I say couple, I mean like 2, maybe 3,000 years, where they've been in a position of power, not only over us, but just in a position of doing anything of I wouldn't even say praise, but just seeing them do anything that would be considered average, you know what I mean? So I'm not even talking about building grand civilizations like Rome and things of that nature. I'm talking about just looking like regular citizens. It's only been a couple thousand years. So the history in itself should prove to us, or our history in itself should prove to us how great and vast we are. But for whatever reason, you call it Stockholm Syndrome or you call it whatever, but a lot of us, including MLK, felt like we weren't receiving the fair treatment. And until we got that from the people who wasn't giving it to us, then we weren't where we needed to be, or we weren't good enough. And that was just a negative reinforcement that was a byproduct of the early stages of the civil rights movement, right? So here's the thing. Towards the end, somebody changed MLK's mind, because like I said, he was a Mason. He was tapped in. He knew everything that was going on. He knew, you know what I mean? He knew everything that was going on. I even think he was an agent until the end. I think he was being used, because if you notice the patterns, they always use a preacher or somebody from the church to get the black community to do shit that's against their better interests, right? So they always use our connection with God, our spirituality, even though a lot of us have been praying to the wrong God, or, you know, putting our energy in the wrong places for the last few hundred years. They know that we have a special connection with God, right? So what they'll do is these occultic groups is they'll team up with a preacher, a pastor, somebody in the spiritual community and our religious community, not even spiritual, but religious community. And they'll team up with them and get them to deliver the message to black people and quote unquote black people. I like to say copper, but just to make it easier for anybody who watches this video who isn't on the same type of frequency that I'm on right now. It took me some time, so I want to be patient with you. But yeah, for quote unquote black people, they eat it up like straight, or we straight eat it up anytime there's a religious person involved and they can talk really well and their points come across smoothly. We eat it up as a mass. Not saying for those of us who are woke and never really subscribe to religion, but yeah, we eat it up. So I really feel like MLK was an agent up until really the last year of his life. That he was in on the finesse. He was in on the joke on us. Like, he was in on it. He knew that leading us into their jurisdiction, or getting us to integrate into their systems and give up all of our own communities and all of our own thriving systems, then that would lead to further poverty and further dissension as far as for our people, and take us further away from being to where we actually wanted to be, which is we just wanted to be prosperous. I mean, we don't hate anybody. We don't, have any problems with anybody. We actually love deeply, just off from Jump Street. Like, you don't even have to know anybody or know a person, and we just share love. We're just that type of people. And but yeah, we don't have any problems with anybody, so we don't want to see anybody, hurting or done wrong. But when it comes down to it, we, for whatever reason, we have a soft spot for other people, and we want them to like us. And instead of just embracing ourselves and building up our own, not saying fuck everybody else, but just let's focus on us, just like in life in general, okay? In your own personal life, if you're not where you want to be, and you got places to go, and you're trying to get there, you got to cut off all the other people in your life, especially the ones who don't mean you any good, and you got to focus on yourself. So as a people, we got to do that. We got to cut off all the other groups who are not pushing us to become what we know we should be, which is prosperous, opulent, abundant, kings, queens, gods, whatever you want to refer to yourself as, emperor, empress, whatever, you know what I mean? Whatever term fits you or you resonate with. But yeah, if they're not on that same time as I'm going to help this group of people, meaning us, black people, I'm going to help black people or copper people get to where they need to be. If they're not on that time, then we need to remove them from our life until we get to where we want to go. You know what I mean? You really shouldn't be in your life at that point either way, anyway, but if they're not trying to push you to become a better person and push you to get to where you need to be or you want to be, then you need to just remove them from your circle. And so that's what we need to do in order to get to where we want to go. We got to buckle down, cut shit out. And, you know, we got to budget our energy. And the majority of our energy should be spent on us. So we need to come together as a collective until we are where we need to be. Isolate ourselves from everybody else, come together as in a collective, and boss the fuck up. That's it. You know what I mean? So I feel like he was an agent all the way up until that last year of his life, because he gave a speech like a couple months before he was getting ready to do the Poor Man's March, which was literally the Copper People's March or the Black People's March. Because what he was doing, he had realized, I think somebody put him on game, or maybe he knew all along, is that this was our land. We are the Native Americans. We are the Copper people here are the Native Americans. All you got to do, it takes a quick search for Webster's Dictionary in 1832, and you can look it up online. All you got to do is Google it. They got it archived online. They got it all archived online, so you don't even have to go find the dictionary version. Just look up 1832 Webster's Dictionary, and then you look up the definition for American. And when you do that, you'll see that it'll read pertaining to the copper-colored races, the aboriginal copper-colored races of the Americans that were here before the European settlement, so on and so forth. So it in plain English, it spells out that we were already here, right? So yeah, he either came into that knowledge. I'm talking MLK now. Came into that knowledge within the last year, or he had it for a while and it was eating away at him, or somebody convinced him to switch up and I think it was Malcolm, but somebody convinced him to switch up the route that he was telling black people to go down, because he was really selling us out. And he finally realized that. And then he gave that speech, like I was saying, at a Masonic Hall, where he was like, the Poor Man's March, what we're really going to do is get our land back for us, our copper and black people. We're going to go to the government and get the international courts involved, not just the local or federal courts. We're going to get the international courts involved, like NATO and so on and so forth. And we're going to get our land back, or at least a lot of it, because they tricked us. That was part of all the treaties and shit that they had our people signing into giving away our land. And the paper, the pen is mightier than the sword, they say. Yeah, which it was, because it was proven, and white people knew they couldn't, or those people knew they couldn't fuck with us with them hands and the Swiss, so they had to come with weapons that were greater than what we could do physically, which they introduced the gun, which we really knew nothing about. They came in with the guns, and then they came in with the paperwork and finessed us with the paperwork too, right? Which is the pen. So they finessed us in two different ways. And so he knew that in order for us to get our land back, we would have to go through court, but we would have to sue on a larger scale, right? So he was saying all of this different stuff, and then the fact that how would, if these slaves came from Africa and our ecosystem and environment and lands and irrigation is just so different, how would those African people and or the white people who were enslaving them, this is a story that they tell us, and it's not all the way true, but how would they then, if that was our ancestors, how would them or the white people know how to till and farm this land? They wouldn't. We were already here. 95% of the slaves were Native American. Now, copper, Native Americans. My color, my complexion, maybe even a little bit lighter, and all the way up to the people who you say are blue-black. Those are different shades of copper, right? Copper is bronze, like light bronze. So you can even go a little bit lighter, maybe even a little light skin, like a mulatto. And then all the way up to the people who you say are blue-black, copper is that too. So copper has a wide range, and that's what we are. We are copper. We're not black. That's a phrase that they use, and I'll just drop that real quick. And they got us to accept, but legally identifying as black means that you're civilly dead. So civilly dead, in the eyes of the law, you are dead. So you are dead property. So since you're already dead, you're not a living being in the eyes of the law. They can do anything they want with you. That's why when you claim that you're black, you see the police officers can kill you and get off because you're already dead in the eyes of the law. You see, they're not going to go and do jail time. They're not going to lose their jobs because the person that they killed, that black person you identify as African American or black, you're already dead in the eyes of the law. So if they killed someone, the person was dead. So that, you know what I mean? That's why they can do what they do and get away with it. Anyway, back to the moral of the story, because I want to make this video less than 20 minutes. MLK came across some information, woke him up. He was getting ready to go to Washington to do that last march. And because of the content and him switching up his stance, he was no longer abiding to the rules of the occult. So he went rogue. He was helping them accomplish their mission, which was to get us integrated and get us to become fully integrated into their systems. And so that way we could be corporate slaves willingly, because we had to accept it willingly. There's nothing that they can make us do against our will. And that's higher forms of law, like international law, maritime law, UCC law. You always have to get somebody to agree to participate in something. And even if it's tacit approval, tacit agreement, just like when you vote for a president or any type of election for a public official, that you giving tacit approval to sign off on anything that they do in office, you can't sue them for, because you're giving them your approval. You can't be mad at them for anything that they do in office. When you voted for them, you gave them your devotion. So that means that you agree with their politics and the way that they go about doing things. The people who can sue, like me, an American national, is because you didn't give any tacit approval to either party. So I can go back and sue the president of the United States if I wanted to. If I felt like he was doing me wrong. I can go and sue the goddamn Federal Reserve if I wanted to, if I felt like they were doing me wrong. You know what I mean? I can sue anybody because I'm on the same level as them. You know what I mean? I'm not under their jurisdiction. They're like, if you're a citizen, this is the government, and then the government agencies, and then the state officials, and then the police who guard and protect all of the properties for all of the entities over them. So police officers are just really, they help contain and maintain the policies of the corporations above them, all the different entities above them. Like I said, the government, the state government, goes up to the so on and so forth. The government agencies, and then the presidency, all of that bullshit. Anyway, so moral of the story, MLK led us astray, but he went rogue during his final years and was getting ready to sing a different tune and tell us what the real was. And because he had so much power and his voice was so strong throughout the copper, aka black community, if he had switched his message to no, we do not need to be integrating, we actually need to be getting our land back, and we need to be getting a check from these people because they fucked us over and they played us and they got to come back and pay for it, then that's what it would be. Because they couldn't have that happen. They couldn't have MLK come out and make that message, because that he literally had the hearts and the minds of all the black people in the U.S. and maybe even outside of the U.S. So if he would have changed that message and told us to start looking within and we need to build with each other, then guess what? We would have did that on a mass scale, and we would have changed it around. We would have got a good portion of our lands back, and then also receive reparations checks. But because he was getting ready to change his message and go do that, they killed him. And the government, the CIA, back in 1999, his wife, Coretta Scott, she was still in trial for she didn't even sue for any money because she didn't want money. She didn't give a fuck about money. She was already good. But what she did want to get on legal documents is the government admitting to having him killed. So not only did it take 30 years for them to finally admit, because they did in 1999, the government finally admitted, the CIA in particular, to having MLK killed. I had that man off. So But anyway, you can look up that court case. It's real simple. Again, just do your Googles, or if you don't use Google, I'd say DuckDuckGo. If you don't use that, I would say Toro. But yeah, it's just like they had that man offed because he was getting ready to start speaking the real. He was getting ready to start going against the establishment. So he lived and quote unquote went against the establishment with no problem speaking that peaceful protest. Let's integrate until they love us, and all of that. He lived and had really no problems, and got to do all his protests. Now, don't get me wrong, they was beating them and doing all of that stuff, but as we know, a lot of that shit was staged. A lot of that shit was staged. You know what I'm saying? You see it now with these different riots and protests that are going on, like the Capitol riot. Like, that shit was a TV show, and not a well executed one either, because the accident was horrible. But yeah, he had no problems. Didn't get shot for all of those years while he was doing the peaceful protesting and trying to get us to integrate and go the wrong way. But as soon as he gets ready to change his message and get us to start going and head towards the right direction, he gets killed by the government. And that'll tell you, everything you need to know right there. That's it. So I will say rest in power to MLK on this MLK Day. Like I said, I don't celebrate these holidays, but rest in power to that man for at least being willing, even at the end of his life, because that's what it's all about. You can do wrong and you can be out of it for 32 years. And in that last year, you turn around and you do the right thing. It changes the whole trajectory of not only your life, but your generations to come after you and your bloodline. You know what I mean? And it helps heal all this different trauma and all of this shit. So I just want you guys to understand that although he led us astray and kind of was one of the main people that led us into this bullshit that we're dealing with now, he also tried to rectify it at the end. And that's what, if life isn't about correcting your mistakes and changing your routes when you do slip up, and you know what I mean, if it's not about that, then what is it about? Learning your lesson. He learned his lesson. Okay, I was willing to sell my people out for a status and a check and to make sure I was always wealthy. But it was eating away at him. So towards the end, he switched his tune against what his handlers and these government agencies were telling him to do, and these occultic societies were telling him to do, and changed his whole tune and song, and it ended up getting him killed. Same thing with happened to Nipsey. He was able to make as much music and even speak motivational, because Nipsey wasn't the same. He wasn't leading people down the wrong route. He would talk about music, about, the drug game and being brought up in that and doing all of that. But he would do that with a message behind it. You know what I mean? And his overall message was to never quit. Invest in yourself. Get out of the streets. Yeah, I know that lifestyle, but it's not for you. But same thing happened with Nipsey, right? He was able to live all those years, even with that message, until he started waking people up to Dr. Sebi and eating right and doing that. But he even had an interview where he was like, man, with this Dr. Sebi shit, if I get killed over this, y'all better ride for me. And nobody rode for him. You know what I mean? I mean, of course, people like me, we talked about it, but we didn't buck the system. We didn't do nothing. You know what I mean? But at least he did what he needed to do. He knew what was right in his heart, what he needed to share, so that it would not only, through his death, it would not only touch him and his family, it would touch so many other people, and they would be privy to that new information that got him killed. Not only he died a few weeks after that interview saying that he was doing the documentary for Dr. Sebi. The man said, if I died because of this shit, because he knew he was making himself a target by doing that Dr. Sebi interview, because Dr. Sebi was killed and taken out. So if he did the documentary, he knew he was going to get targeted. He knew, off Jump Street. And lo and behold, it happened. You know what I mean? He knew it. But he opened so many eyes to so many people. And that's what I give him credit for. But he lived a much, in my eyes, from the outside looking in, a much truer life than MLK. But MLK tried to do the right thing at the end, right? So I'm not going to give him nowhere near as much credit as Nipsey, but I'll give him credit, you know what I mean? Like, you tried to change. You tried to rectify the mistake you made. You tried to use the power that you had to help improve the lives of your people. That's all it's about. And when I say your people, I mean your immediate family. It could be your community. It could be what group you attribute yourself to, or it could be a racial group that you resonate with or identify with. So yeah. Anyway, rest in peace to both of them kings. I don't even know why I brought that man up, Nipsey, but rest in peace to MLK. Rest in power to that man, and rest in power to Nipsey. And it's really about, if we could learn anything from those two individuals, okay, what is the right thing for us to be doing? How can I assist in opening the eyes of my people to that right thing? Because cognitive dissonance is a real thing. How can I assist, and how can I make sure my life and my purpose displays what I want for my people, or helps us get to that point, helps us get closer, right? So that's it, man. That's it, man. That's all. Rest in peace to that man, MLK. Or rest in power. And yeah, man. Y'all have yourself a good MLK Monday. I'ma just be here working, man. You know what I'm saying? Got so many dreams, and you know, I gotta sacrifice even more for it, man. I ain't sacrificed so much for my dreams in my life, but hey, the shit don't stop, man. You gotta keep doing it, because you gonna get there eventually. Even through the tough days, man, you gonna get there, man. You gonna get there. Just sacrifice a little bit more. You're gonna get to where you want to be, right? And make it fun. It don't gotta be a dreadful sacrifice. You know what I mean? Make the sacrifices that you're making fun. Try to make it seem fun to you. You know what I mean? You don't have to be, because that's how I was for a minute. It's like, dang, how much more sacrificing do I need, universe? I've been putting in the work. I know my work is talented. Like, I know where I know where I should be. I know people should be fucking with me on this level. But now I've reached a point where I'm just patiently working. I'm not patiently waiting for my dreams to happen. I'm patiently working towards them. It's a daily, consistent thing, man. So I wish nothing but the same for y'all, nothing but blessings and light. Man, y'all have yourself a good day. I'm out of here. Definitely went over the 20 minutes. No shade.